Hello everyone. So yesterday I bought a tractor attachment that I'm hoping is going to make feeding cows a little bit easier and hopefully save me some time too while I'm doing it. You have to excuse my voice today. The whole family's kind of been fighting a cold and a cough, and I'm just kind of getting to the end of it. So if you guys have watched the channel for a little bit, you've seen how I feed round bales. When it comes to feeding those dry round bales, I usually just grab them with the front of the tractor and roll them out with the bucket or the grapple, whatever I've got on there, the best I can. But then when it comes to feeding the silage bales, I usually put that tractor into low gear, let it drive itself. I hop off, and with the claw side of a hammer, I kind of peel that silage apart as the tractor's driving along and lay out the hay that way. So the attachment that I bought is called the Worksaver Bale Spin Off, and it came disassembled, so I need to get this thing assembled and get it put on the tractor. We'll go try it out and see what we think of it. So we've got the 3-point attachment here that attaches to the back of the tractor. We got I think there's a 5-foot long spear. And we got this plate here that has these 3 smaller spears. And I assume that spear runs through here. Then inside of here, I'm not quite sure yet. Let's open it up and see what's in here. Plate. We've got our hydraulic motor here, chain, some bolts, and looks like maybe a bushing. Looks like we got our hydraulic lines. So the concept of all this is going to act like a bale spear that you put on the 3-point hitch on the back of a tractor, but it's got this hydraulic motor, it's got a chain and some sprockets, and you spear into a bale and use that hydraulic motor to actually spin the bale. As you're spinning it, hopefully it's unrolling that bale for you as you drive along and leaving you a nice row of hay so the cows can come in and eat on that row of hay you lay down for them. So far it seems easy enough to put together. First thing I'm not happy about is they didn't even send you with the quick connects, you know, the little ball valve that goes on the end of your hydraulic hose so you can plug it into your hydraulic system. So I'm gonna have to round up 2 of those quick connects. And these actually just screw into the side of the hydraulic motor there. So this is a sprocket that's gonna go onto the hydraulic motor. And on the back side of this plate here, let's get 3 spears. There's the other sprocket already attached here. So the chain will wrap around this and the hydraulic motor. That's what's going to spin this whole apparatus still here. So it took me a second to figure out how this all works, but what they've done is this big long spear is going to go through this hole, and I don't know if you see, but there's a hole there that you're going to bolt through. So that spear is going to stay stationary, and then you're going to mount this spinning plate here onto that spear, and this is going to rotate on the spear. And there's a grease cert so you can grease this up and keep it nice and greased. So I think it's going to actually be easier for me to mount the 3-point hitch first to the tractor and then assemble it right on the tractor, just so this isn't wanting to tip and fall over on my. I'm gonna stick this bolt right through this hole, and that's gonna lock this spear in place. Stick our bolt in, grab our nut and lock washer. Just kind of put that on a little bit. I'm not gonna snug anything down yet till I got everything mounted and in place. And once I like the way everything's sitting, I'll come back and tighten all my nuts and bolts. So I think the next thing now is gonna grab this plate with the 3 spears on it, I'm gonna slide it down the spear here. I'm gonna add some grease to it first. And then you got this locking collar. It'll slide down and tighten down here to lock that into place so it doesn't want to ride back and forth. I'm not going to tighten that down until I get this chain and the hydraulic motor on, in case I need to have a little wiggle room. You got this plate here that mounts to the back side, and the hydraulic motor will mount to this. So we just got to undo these 4 nuts. That plate will slide on, and we should be able to mount our motor to this. So same thing, I'm just going to hand tighten all this stuff until I get everything hooked up. So let's put our sprocket on here. And this is a 5/32 Allen wrench that'll tighten these 2 locking bolts there. All right, we're ready to drape our chain across there and put our master link in. So I had to slide this motor all the way up to get my chain loose enough that I could get that master link in there. So now I'll just adjust that back to where it needs to be and get our hoses hooked up, and I think we should be about ready to get this thing tightened down and give it a try. Like I said, I need to find some quick connect ends for these 2 sides. I don't think I have anything laying around, so I might just have to rob Peter to pay Paul for today. Probably just gonna steal them off this round baler for now, because we won't be needing it anytime soon. All right, we'll throw a little bit of thread tape on there and we're ready to go. Okay, we got it hooked up. It shouldn't matter which side them hoses go on, because I think you'll be able to turn it whichever way you want, just depending on which way you're pulling or pushing your lever. So all my pieces are used up, besides these shields that I'll put on here at the very end. So I think I'm ready to give it a try. I'm going to tighten down this motor just so it doesn't move around at all once I try the hydraulics. Last thing's this keeper. This is a 1/4 inch Allen wrench. Okay. All right, I think we're ready to give it a try. I'll try it first, and then if I like it, we'll put the shields on and be ready. Well, everything seems to be running pretty smooth. We'll put our shields on and go give it a try. You know, so after handling all these parts this morning, seems like this thing's pretty well made, you know, pretty beefy. It says it's built with pride in Litchfield, Illinois. So, made in America, that's pretty good. So I'm gonna try 1 dry bale and 1 silage bale today. And I think what's gonna make a lot of difference is making sure you're spinning this bale the way it needs to be spun. So from unrolling so many bales by hand, I know that these bales unroll a lot nicer if you spin them the opposite way they were baled. The way you can tell which way this bale was baled is you come and look at all these little stems sticking out. So if you run your hand across here, you'll feel which way kind of catches the most stems. So all these stems are pointing out, kind of pointing out this way. I don't know how well you can see it. So they're all pointing out this way a little bit. So that means this bale was baled in this direction, so a counterclockwise direction. So that means we're gonna want to unroll it in a clockwise direction, at least the way the bale's sitting now. So I'm gonna grab this with the fork, and then I'll probably drop it there in the field. And it might get turned around by the time I get it back on the spear. We'll just have to readjust once we get it on the spear for good. So this was my biggest hesitation about buying this. I just didn't know how it would work with these silage bales. These are quite a bit heavier than those dry bales. I'm not exactly sure what they weigh, but we do make them a little bit smaller because we bale them up so wet. I'm just not sure how it's going to work with this. Even just there stabbing it out of the bag, I can tell I'm going to have to drop it and readjust it to get it stabbed more. Down here in the center of the bale, the snow's built up a little bit higher on the side of those bags, so it stabbed a little high in the top of this bale, and it wouldn't rotate very well probably. So our bales are 5 feet long, and we make the silage bales about 4 feet high. So same with our dry bales, you know, they're the same. There's also 5 feet long, but we make these ones about 5 feet tall, so they're quite a bit bigger. So we'll readjust this silage bale and we'll give it a try. I think the same thing with these silage bales is I'm going to want to unroll it the opposite way as what it was baled. I feel like you can see on this bale a little bit better which direction it was baled. So you can see that this bale here was baled in a counterclockwise direction. So we're going to want to unroll it in a clockwise direction. And hopefully all this peels off right here on the right side of this bale. So all I'm going to do starting off is just come cut this twine. Then we'll just start unrolling it and see how well it unrolls. I might have to get off a couple times and maybe help it out a bit and peel some layers off, but we'll see. This dry bale though, I don't think I'm gonna have to cut any twine on this because almost looks like the bottom twine rotted off already. That's about usually what happens with these round bales that we lay on the ground. We use that sisal twine and it usually rots off on the bottom. So I think probably when we start unrolling this one, that whole top, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches is probably going to slough off, and then we'll get down to the core and hopefully that unrolls pretty nice. Seemed to work out pretty good. The only thing I'm not too sure about unrolling that silage is starting and stopping it. Sometimes it seemed like when I stopped it, it hit pretty hard. I mean, that chain seemed like it was a decent sized chain, but I could see that maybe snapping one of these days. Let's try out this dry bale. This dry round bale is actually giving me a little bit harder time than that silage one did. I ended up just grabbing it with the bucket or with the grapple and rolling it that way. Before I bought this, I talked to a few guys that I know that have one of these, and they said that that happens sometimes with this hay that was maybe baled up a little bit wet. It just seems to stick together too much that it doesn't like to unroll. That's probably what this is. This is seems like it's sticking together pretty well. It's probably a little bit wet. So I'm just gonna finish unrolling this one by hand. We'll go grab a couple more bales and try it in this other pasture. I'm gonna grab a more alfalfa bale next time. This one's mostly grass, and see how it does with that alfalfa. I think the silage is gonna be pretty much the same. So far my first impressions with that spin-off attachment have been pretty good. I think it's going to take me a little bit to get used to it and figure out the best way to use it. I can already tell the condition when the hay was baled up is going to make a lot of difference on how well it unrolls. But in my opinion, that silage, I think it unrolled the best and seemed to spread itself out the best. Than the, you know, those drier round bales, they seemed like they spread themselves out pretty good. Those little bit wetter bales that were baled up a little wet, seemed like they stuck together a bit more. Didn't want to really flake off or peel off from the rest of the bale. So those seem like those might be a little bit harder to deal with. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's worked out pretty good for me. So for anybody that's interested in looking into one themselves, I'll put some details down in the description for you and you can go from there. I don't know if I'll get a video out next week with it being the holidays. I'm going to be spending a lot of time with family and be going on a few trips. So if you guys don't hear from me next week, that's why. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video and thanks for watching. Have a good day.